everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And today I'm very excited. I have a special bonus interview for you today. We are talking with director Jonathan Smith. He's the director of the new indie film Guy Friends. And Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so this is your first time on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about how you got to this point where you're directing this little film.
Yes. I've been, so I wanted to make a film. I wanted to be a filmmaker ever since I first saw Jurassic Park. That's my rather unoriginal origin story.
Yeah.
Made films ever since I was a kid. After that, in high school, in college, and then after college, I became, I guess I'll call myself a professional filmmaker. Not that I've earned a ton of money from it, but I've directed 4 feature films since I've left college. Guy Friends is my fourth. My first 3, they're out there. They've been distributed by. I've worked with a few distributors at this point. They're on all the typical platforms. Like most films, they hop around from platform to platform. And Guy Friends is my 4th film. And I guess one thing that's unique about Guy Friends is that it's a pandemic film, which is why it was so tiny. Maybe, I don't know. I'm waiting to see how much other people notice how tiny a film it is, or if it looks at all like it was a pandemic film. I don't think so. But if maybe fellow filmmakers could see, like, oh yeah, I see how you try to make as many scenes as possible outdoors, or as
Right.
scenes as few people as possible. I don't feel like audiences will generally notice that, but I'm curious to see if other filmmakers notice. But yeah, it's one of the unique things is that it was a pandemic film.
Yeah. Well, it is a lot outside. That's true.
Yes.
But it is also in New York, so people are outside quite a bit. But
Mhm.
it didn't feel super pandemic-y to me because you didn't have like a lot of Zoom calls or things like that,
Yeah.
which you certainly got a bunch there, or didn't feel like everything was in the same room, all shot in the same room.
No, I
Uh,
mean it's made to look like a regular film,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we endeavored to do that. Like there are no pandemic concessions or anything. Like the two, yeah, the two biggest adjustments, like I said, were just like any scene that can be outdoors, naturally so, justifiably so,
Uh-huh.
do that, and any indoor scenes as few people as possible, and then
Yeah.
otherwise you'll notice some people in masks in the background. But even now, as
Mm.
we're interviewing, you'll still notice people in masks outdoors.
Yeah.
Even though obviously, like I don't know a percentage, but most people are vaccinated, and the strain has weakened. But yeah, anyway, there you go.
Yeah. So you said Jurassic Park was a big influence for you?
Yes, it was my very first influence. I'll describe my film going experience for it because it's such an incredible film going experience in retrospect. I was really young when I saw it. Young and dumb enough not to know what the word Jurassic meant at the time. And a friend of mine just invited me and said, "Hey, you want to go see a movie this afternoon? It's called Jurassic Park." And I didn't go to a dictionary and look up the word. I didn't even know what it was
Uh-huh.
about. He didn't tell me it was about dinosaurs. It was just like a quick agreement. So I literally walked into the theater not even knowing it was about dinosaurs.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, and I remember sitting down, and this buddy of mine, he was a funny guy. So like I remember I would try to one up with him, like I'd try to be funny too. And I remember like starting the film. I don't even know how I could possibly joke about it after the first scene, because even the first scene with the unseen velociraptor is pretty engrossing, just like
Yeah.
attack in Jaws. But I remember like, trying to joke around with him or whatever. But then eventually I stopped joking because I'm like, this movie's really good. And it sucked me in. And then,
Yeah.
by the time of the T-Rex attack, I was just engrossed and in a fugue state. And I remember walking out and wanting to be I'll actually say specifically wanting to be a director, never thinking much about writing at the time.
Uh-huh.
Certainly when I started, writing was just for me, I considered it, like when I started making my own little films as a kid, writing was just a necessary step, and I didn't regard it as much more than that. Now, of course, I write and direct my own films, and I regard writing far more highly than I did as a kid. But I
Yeah.
started wanting to be a director. I thought, like, who was the person responsible for that? Oh, it's a guy named Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's any good. And I figured out what that role was, and like that's what I want to do. So there you go.
I relate. Jurassic Park was very influential for me as well. It
Mm,
would be one of my like key movies.
mm.
It's the movie I've seen the most on the big screen.
Oh.
And it was in my theaters for a long time. I
Mhm.
swear it was there for like most of that year. I mean, it was just there forever, and I just got one sad again and again and again and again. And I remember when the first time that I saw the big moment where she takes off her sunglass, and look what, that kind of thing, was just, I mean, I was as odd as they were, as the characters
Yeah,
were. I couldn't believe
yeah.
it. I'm like, that looks so real. And
Uh,
yeah,
it helps too, frankly, that I think Jurassic Park is actually still some of the best CGI out there. From
yeah,
1983, still some of the best. I'd actually like, uh, well, I can quibble so much about CGI these days. But my
yeah,
big theory about CGI is that like most, and I'm sure a lot of it is just like time constraints, like studios overtax their special effects teams these days. But Jurassic Park was still very much like paying attention to the physics and like the
yeah,
heaviness and the weight of something like that. And now we see a lot of like cartoon physics, and even if our brains don't consciously recognize why it's not working
yeah,
for us, we just do because we know physics. But I can watch that and be like, oh my gosh, like these physics feel real. And I still think that that's a big part of the reason why that and Terminator
yeah.
2 and
Oh, yeah.
The
Well,
Abyss,
and
a lot of Lord of the Rings are the best still.
yeah, and he cared about the characters.
Oh yes.
These were people that it wasn't just a stupid monster movie, and it was these characters were interesting, and they had something to say. And I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, we could probably do a whole Jurassic Park podcast, but one of my
Yes.
favorite scenes of the
I don't
movie
give a shit
is,
about Guy Friends. Let's talk
yeah,
about Jurassic Park.
is the
I'd
whole
much rather do
scene.
that.
I love the scene where Dr. Sadler is talking with John Hammond about the flea circus.
Yes, that's a great
He says
one. I
it's
love
all
that.
an illusion. It's still an
Yeah,
illusion.
yeah, that's a great one.
It's a great
Yeah,
scene.
yeah. The debates about science and the morality of certain scientific choices,
Yeah.
and like David Koepp, the screenwriter, knew, like not that he was not going to do this, but he knew like I still need to give Sam Neill's character, Alan. I'm going to give him a clearly stated flaw, which is he doesn't really like children. And by the end, he's
Yes.
like, by the end, he's cradling two kids and he's learned to like children. He's art.
Oh,
Yay. All of
it's
this
so
was just
good.
designed to make one guy like children a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. So good.
Ho, ho, ho! We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
A little bit about kind of your backstory. So you had this experience with Jurassic Park. You got really into film. And so then did you go to like film school?
Uh, Not a film school necessarily. So I went to Yale, but I majored
Hmm.
in film studies there. There's no, well, gosh, I don't know what it is now, but what's funny is I'll sometimes mentor students from there, and it seems like since I graduated, nothing much has necessarily changed about the program. It's still just a major. There's no dedicated film school.
Okay.
And if you want to, and it's still like mostly theory based, if you want to learn production, there are a few classes, but you really just have to go out and do it on your own. Ever since Jurassic Park through high school, I was making, like little student films myself. When I went to college, I majored in film, but I made all of my films almost independently of classes. There was like one film I remember. I would submit scenes for one of my few production classes that I took there, but I didn't make the film for that class. I was just making it on my own. And while I was there, and I also I also got into comedy when I was in college. That's an important thing to mention too, because I've done that a lot and kind of in parallel to my film career. And so I should talk about that. So I started improvisational and sketch comedy there, and I made a lot of comedy videos with one of my comedy troupes there. But while I was there, I made how many short films? I'm not trying to think. Certainly like a couple short films, like 5 to 10 minutes. One short film that was over 40 minutes, somewhere in the 40s for minutes. One that was like 35 minutes, which was a regional semifinalist for a Student Academy Award. That was my one. I probably have that letter somewhere. And then my senior year, and all of those I wrote and directed. My senior year, I actually directed a student feature that a friend of mine wrote, and I directed, and we both produced it together. And I did that over the course of my senior year. And I still only say that I've directed 4 features because that was a student feature, and it's not distributed or anything like that. Like I basically start, like my cutoff for me for being a professional is like once I left college. So I have made 5 features, but 4 professionally since I went to college, and that was an interesting experience to make something that it's actually still my longest feature to date. It's that one, I think it's like 95 minutes, and all my other ones I chopped the hell out of them. I probably should have chopped the hell out of that one too, but I chopped the hell out of this one, and I chopped the hell out of all the ones that I've made professionally. They all end up being like a little over 80 minutes. Even though the scripts are longer than that would, longer than 80 minutes would indicate. It's usually like a page per minute. So that was kind of like my student background. And then after I graduated, I moved to Los Angeles, and I started working out there, but then I started doing a lot of comedy, mostly at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater once it opened. Very fortunately, oh gosh, now I'm dating myself. Very fortunately, it opened in Los Angeles right about when I was pretty much right when I arrived there. And I learned so much I wasn't very good when I was younger. I like to think that I'm okay now at improvising, but I learned so much about comedy, and it truly influenced my writing, but not just like in comedic ways, like structurally. Like I would take principles from comedy and I would apply them to drama too, and not to generate a laugh, for dramatic purposes, because it teaches you, if you pay attention, it teaches you just basically like basic scenic and even story structural basics that can apply across genres. And so I started doing that, and then, how old was I? I think I directed my first feature when I was 26. If I remember correctly, I can't remember. That one was just a straight up sex comedy, albeit with no nudity in it. And then my second feature film, I've ended up almost pretty much incidentally, kind of totally incidentally. All my films have been about like 5 years apart in release. And invariably, once I start to finish one, I start to feel the itch to make another one. So I made one when I was about 26, and then I made a second one, which was more, I always just say it's a ripoff of Annie Hall, which it is. I call it like an angrier Annie Hall.
I was going to ask you if you were influenced by Woody Allen, particularly Annie Hall in Manhattan. I could see in Guy Friends.
Yes, we will discuss Manhattan probably ad nauseum in this call, because I take nothing from the story, but certainly like superficial elements, I take plenty. And it's funny, like one thing that's funny about like my filmmaking Not that I want to talk about myself in any sort of lofty terms, but Steven Spielberg inspired me. But like my filmmaking has gravitated more towards like a Woody Allen level of filmmaking insofar as like, I kind of just call it like on the ground filmmaking with people, like, and it's about people.
Yeah.
Spielberg is, a lot of spectacle and everything. I can't get enough of how Spielberg like directs the eye. That's incredible. And I try to use that sort of thing, but these days, and it might also just be for budgetary reasons. If I had $100 million,
Right.
I'd go make a Spielberg style film with all kinds of like awesome shots where I'm reframing like 3 times and dollying in the middle and directing in focus. And the whole shot lasts 3 minutes. I'd love to do that, but I don't have the money to do it. So all my films have kind of been like more ground level, dealing with like people, and just aiming for like good composition. I like a sustained master a lot. Anyway, let me get back to the history. My third film, I just wanted to make something fun. Ironically, making all of my like most straight up comedies have been the hardest to make. They've been like the least enjoyable on set because that's actually not a genre thing. It's more just like making a film for making a film for very little money is always hard, regardless of the genre, and always hardest on whoever's producing it and directing it. But my third film is just a straight up like fluffy, lighthearted wedding comedy. And then this one is a comedy, maybe with some artsy-ish looking elements, and certainly like a little bit of the feels, I guess,
Yeah. So what's like the process like? So you have an idea, you get your script, you have it. So then do you like make pitches to people to get funding, or how does that all kind of happen that, okay, we're making this?
Yes. Let me answer for all 4 of my films because I don't have any single way. I'll say at the end of the day, I ended up making all of mine by myself at the end of the day. That's not to say that some people did not invest and some people did not help immensely. But at the end of the day, they basically were my decision to be like, all right, let's go make a film. So my first film was very much that way. I was new in LA. I moved out there with like 0 connections. And after a certain number of years, I'm like, well, like knocking on doors, trying to introduce myself to people and all that stuff. It's like, well, nobody's even giving me a chance to like pitch, or certainly not to make a film. And I want to make film. That's what I came out here to do. So I just honestly, like with credit cards, went and made a film.
Wow.
And that was it. Maybe $1,200 worth of people, from investments from other people, but that's like not even close to what it cost. And I just went out and made it myself. And then I tried to earn that money back while I finished the film. And like that's what happens. I go out and make the film, and then I earn the money back, almost, and then I go make another one and dig myself deeper into a hole again. So
it's amazing. I mean, that's really cool. I admire that because just having the gumption of just being like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna make it happen.
Well, I mean, it's what I want to do. It's what I like to do, and whatever. I've learned to live a life of privation, and I'll say invisible poverty. Nobody knows I'm impoverished, but I am. I'm in an okay place, but barely. But in any case, I'm joking. I hang in there. But then also like the film, like I went and that film I just made on my own. I went out, I found a distributor. I remember like I contacted like literally hundreds of distributors, and 12 wanted to watch it, and 3 were interested, and I signed with 2. And that first film was on Netflix, which was like its biggest financial.
What's that one called? The first one?
Oh, that one is. I always have to say it this way. I always say the log line and the title first. It's a comedy about pornographers who make an Oscar-worthy drama.
Okay.
And it's called Breast Picture.
Okay.
Because if I just say Breast Picture, like what?
Right.
But if I say the log line, then you realize, oh, it's a pun on Best Picture. It's not just. Right. It's not just lurid and prurient or anything like that. It's right. I promise. And there's no skin in it, incredibly. But I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So that one, I just went out and made on my own. My second one, that one actually cost much less. And that was another one where I just decided to go make it. Now, my wedding comedy, that one was that. So that came from a script that was a long time. I'm sure people who hated the film would say, really? You worked on the script for 10 years? But that one I started writing after I left college because I just thought of the premise after I left college. And I wrote like a crappy draft or two after college. And then I returned to it. I just kept returning to it every now and then. And at one point I had optioned the script to this one director, actually like an Oscar-winning for documentary, an Oscar-winning director. And the option was with him for a little while, but then eventually it lapsed. It wasn't made, and so it returned to me. And then one day I table read that script. I was like, I'm going to return to this. And I table read it with a group of my friends at work. And it actually started a writing group that table read started a writing group that continues today. But the table read went really great. And I was like, you know what? I should try to make this film because I always wanted it to exist. So that one, again, was just that one I found more investors for. And more people invested in it, which was nice. And but even still, it was still a decision for me to just go out and make it. Guy Friends, this will be maybe a good segue into talking about it a little bit. I actually wrote it to be more like a mid-budget comedy. Anybody who watches the film obviously will notice that it's in black and white, but I wrote it to be just like a normal mid-budget comedy in color. Nothing's special about the way that it's made. Jamie, the main character, was actually a lawyer in that one, and I think a trial was a notable subplot in the first draft. And some things changed. Well, the pandemic changed most of the budgetary stuff. I want to answer your question first. So that one I started. I actually did seek some actresses for that film that were kind of namey. I met with at least one, namey actress for that. I met with a namey actress for my wedding comedy too. But in any case, I met with a namey actress for that one, and that meeting actually did not go well at all. I think her manager read the script and really liked it, and then she read it just before the meeting and did not like it, but the meeting was already scheduled. So it's funny. And so I feel like she was kind of certainly disinterested and vaguely hostile, actually. But in any case, I guess she maybe really didn't like the script. But actually, some of her notes about it were quite good, and I remember using some of her notes. But that meeting, actually, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with a no-name. I shouldn't say no name. I feel bad saying that because the lead actress in the film is actually my future sister-in-law.
Oh, no way.
Sorry, Kavita, I didn't mean to say no. But she would agree with that. She's a nurse. She never acted since the first acting. She is no name. But I decided to do that. And then also the pandemic arrived, and that completely changed any of my plans for the script. Until I don't know how many months into the pandemic, I re-envisioned it. We can talk about that in a second, but all of that is to say, that was one where I decided, you know what, I want to go make this, and I just went out and made it on my own. So, like I said, varying degrees of investors here and there, and maybe some company entanglements, but at the end of the day, the decision was always just me saying, let's go do this.
That's awesome. I love that.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor of this episode of the podcast. New from Harpeth Road Press, we have Lindsay Gibson's new perfect beach read called Fly Away Summer. Chef Lana Kelly hopes she can acquire the inn her family lost, but when it goes up for sale, the inn is snapped up by Hunter Graham of Graham Property Development in New York City, who plans to transform it into an event venue. Lana isn't so thrilled about her new neighbor, but could this be a case of enemies turned to lovers? Pick up Fly Away Summer wherever you purchase books or use the affiliate link below. Find out more about Lindsay and all the terrific new books from Harpeth Road at harpethroad.com. That's harpethroad.com.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about Guy Friends? What's the story?
Yes. I want to go look up I haven't pitched it in a while. I want to go look up the log line. All right. So Guy Friends. It's a comedy, and it's about a character named Jamie. She has her whole life considered herself a guy's girl, and then one day, shortly after, like literally the day after she and her boyfriend break up, all of her guy friends, and there are many, like she has many guy friends in life. Literally the morning afterwards, every single one of her guy friends proposes his secret, undying love for her, back to back to back to back to back, and she's like, "Oh!" And it kind of turns her life upside. Now, one of the fun ironies of the film is that it's a film. It's called Guy Friends. It's ostensibly about Jamie dealing with all of her guy friends who she didn't realize were secretly in love with her, and who all suddenly profess their love for her simultaneously. Once the moment that they have that opportunity. Even though it's a film about guy friends, it's actually a story about Jamie befriending her first female friend.
Yeah.
So ironically, it's called Guy Friends. It's really about two girlfriends.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So how did you get this? I had the idea for this.
Yes, that's a good one. All right, go back. I have to think back. Way back to the beginning. One of my best friends, his name's Chris Samasco, fantastic guy, one of the, if not one of the smartest people I know, and also one of the funniest people I know. And we worked together in an animation studio. He was in the story department, I was in development. And development is basically just an extension of story. And I was friends with all of the story people there because they were all, I mentioned my comedy background. They were all like improvisers who just don't improvise. They just, they don't go on stage and do it, but they still the exact same kind of people with the exact same kind of mindset, and generally the same sort of comedic brain. And one day, Chris and I were like just chatting on the floor with a bunch of with some friends there. For some reason, the conversation went in the direction of like people suddenly professing secret loves for other people, like coworkers or friends from a long time. And I remember. I don't remember exactly how it went, but Chris like joked. He joked about something in some way that it was like half the premise of his film, and then I joined in on his joke, and it kind of turned into like I can't remember exactly what we said, but like each of us kind of like thought of one half of the premise. And then I think after that conversation, I walked up to Chris. I was like, "Hey, that could be a really funny idea for a film. You want to develop it together?" Now, Chris, and I don't think he'll mind this characterization because he'll completely agree with it. Chris is a very busy guy, and between the two of us, he would readily admit that I'm the one who will actually sit down and do all the work on an idea. Between two people who would say we should do something about that. Between me and Chris, it'll be like Chris would probably say like, "Yes, we should," and by that it means I'll say some things and then you'll go do it. And so that's what it is. And I understand, like we've done so much together creatively, where it's just like we're both equally like joking back and forth and all, but I'm the one who actually goes and like types it out. And so Chris and I just, like I'd go write something and then I'd go tell Chris what I wrote, and like he'd comment on it and we'd joke a little bit, and I'd go write some more, or maybe I'd think of an idea and we'd go bat it around. And so we kind of like, he's a story by credit on this film because that's kind of like how it developed. I was the actual writer. And so I wrote the first draft. So like, for the writing part, like, I conferred with Chris some more afterwards, but like once I had written the first draft, it was all me. Remind me of the original question. How
did you get the idea?
Yes. Okay. That's how I got the idea. So I feel like I answered that question.
Well, how did you get this idea of dealing with like girls with guy friends versus girls with girlfriends?
Yes. Sorry. Now I realize what I was getting to in the story, because I am going to answer that question, I promise. The first draft. I already mentioned my writing group. I sat down and we read the first draft. And the first draft, my personal enjoyment for it, what I wanted to do with the first draft was literally just mock my own courtship habits and I feel the courtship habits of other men in this world. It was literally just to mock myself through the guy friends, all the things that the guy friends do, like pretty much all of them I've done in some way. And it was all just to mock myself, like relentlessly. And so I read the first draft of my writing group, and it was a funny writing group session because afterwards, like excitedly, they all like started just like critiquing it left and right. At one point, like one of my friends had to be like, "Oh, by the way, sorry, like we're critiquing it left and right, but the script is really funny." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." But I could tell like their critiques were from, because it's, I like to think that they saw potential in it. During that writing group, that same friend, kind of in a tag team with another female friend of mine, they both said like, "What if?" Because that first draft was, I think in that first draft, Jamie, like, she learned a lesson or two, but she ended up with like some other guy, like very cliche, like maybe somebody she never noticed before.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was even Ted. I can't even remember the character of Ted. But my friend Erica, I call her by her last name, so I should say first name. My friend Erica and my friend Elizabeth. It's hard for me to say because I only call her by her last name. But my friend Erica and Elizabeth, they both said, "What if this were actually a story about Jamie befriending her first female friend?" And I said, like, of course,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like that's the direction that the story needs to go, duh. And that's where this, like from that moment on after the first draft, that's where the story went in that direction. Even still, I came up with Sandy, and then the film revolved around that relationship. Even still, there was a lot of development and change and exactly how that played out all the way through the pandemic drafts and the final film.
Yeah, I like that it's a story about friendship
Yeah.
more than romance. I think there were a lot of spots where it's like, okay, we could have taken it down that conventional path like you were talking about, but we're gonna have it be about these two women becoming friends.
Yes, I try to do that. I mean, I hope anybody tries to do that in a film, any director or writer. I remember, like, in my wedding comedy, at every turn, like, I mean, I know the familiar beats of a wedding comedy. So at every turn, I tried to do something. I tried to do it differently, or even go beyond. Like instead of finishing on the big wedding for the main character, the bride, I'm going to go beyond that. And certainly with this story, I always say, like, I compare this film. I always say Guy Friends is Manhattan meets I Love You Man, in case you've seen I Love You Man.
Mm-hmm.
And so some things I didn't stray too far away from with I Love You Man, but every place in the story, like once I feel myself coming up against like, an obvious cliche or a typical move for the story, I try to do it in some sort of different way, or either subvert it or go in a different direction or whatever. So if I succeeded in Guy Friends, then I'm happy.
Yeah. So you mentioned Kavita and her casting a little bit, but what was that like for you casting the role of Jamie and then also Katie as Sandy?
Yes. So two very different ways of casting people. Like I said, I spoke to at least one namey actress for Jamie, but then I also auditioned people. Can't remember if I put out a notice or not, or if I just asked for referrals, but I auditioned some actresses for the role of Jamie, and received a lot of great auditions. Again, this was in the pandemic, so it wasn't like in person, it was over Zoom. I received a lot of great videos. One thing that I liked, small side note, one thing that I like to do is no matter what, and anybody in the film who's watching this is none of it was a consolation prize because everybody was fantastic. But anytime somebody auditions for me for a certain role, if I don't give the role to that person, then I try to hire that person. I try to cast that person in something else. Just as, I figure it's nice, and usually, like, most people who audition are pretty great. I feel like there are maybe like two people who auditioned for Guy Friends somewhere. I was like, I can't really cast these people anywhere. But oh gosh, now I hope those people aren't watching this video. But they just didn't fit in any roles.
Yeah.
But in any case, I watched a lot of videos, and I remember thinking, like, oh yeah, like some of these actresses are really great. And then Kavita has been like, so she's my brother's now fiance. They had been dating for quite a while. I can't even remember how long. And before I made the film, I went home, and for the winter holidays, and Kavita was there with my brother, and I knew Kavita like okay, I'd met her like once or twice, and I remember like hanging out at home. There was a moment where I was just like I kind of like sat back in my chair and like watched her for a second. She didn't realize that I was watching her in this way. But I was like, she could maybe be good for Jamie. I mean, she's she's a nurse, but I don't know. Kind of appeals to me like she could be an actress and she might be kind of good for Jamie. Because one thing that was also true about the character of Jamie's, and this is like written, this isn't me just like, oh, I'm a director who wants to work with beautiful women or something like that. There are plenty of directors like that out there. That was an essential part of the character, which is like, oh, she needs to be like this beauty that like, anybody could objectively say like, oh yes, that's a very attractive woman. Because, I wanted everybody in the world of guy friends, every guy to like, want to be attracted to her. That's part of the premise.
Right.
It's part of the premise of the story. And so, and Kavita's, beautiful young Indian woman. And so I was like, all right, well, she fits that. And I also feel like, I think that she could be an actress, and she kind of like her general vibe could kind of work for Jamie. So I asked her, I said, I also asked my brother, like, would you mind? Because, I don't know if, well, yeah, I just wanted to ask my brother, like, I'm going to ask Kavita a funny question, but would you like to audition for my film? Would you like read the role? And she did a good job. And eventually I talked to her a little bit about it. Like, I just said like, hey, you want to do this? I was taking a risk.
So she was totally green, like she had no acting?
None whatsoever.
Wow. She did really good, especially, yeah.
I want to talk about that because it's honestly probably the riskiest casting move in my career because she was completely green. And even from her video, I could see that she was green, but like in her video, I could be like, she could be good at this. So we both kind of, after discussing, we both kind of decided to do it. And here's the great thing. This will go into, this is the last thing I'll say about Kavita before I move on to the Katie question, because that also answers Kavita a little bit. Kavita, like, for somebody who was doing it for the first time ever, was completely natural, like a total natural, and looked to me like, somebody who had gone to years of acting school. And between action and cut, like she would snap into character. And I'd be like, you're doing things that like people take years to achieve, like the way that you like drop into character and snap into it. And I was just like, and like even just natural things of just like, cheating out a little bit, keeping her face a little bit to the camera and all that. It was just incredible. Now I also want to credit Kavita and Justin Clark, who plays Ted, who's also producer on the film. Justin was in my wedding comedy, and he was hilarious as, honestly, I called the character that other homeless guy because he's not.
Well, I had that down as a question because I thought he was really good. I think he's a find.
Yeah,
he's very charming. He's very handsome. He's great.
Yes, he's fantastic. He's got the look. And here's the other thing I'll say about him, because I do want to talk about Justin as an actor. I know you asked about Katie.
You should tell him he should make Hallmark. He could be great in Hallmark movies.
Oh, wow. Justin,
yes, he really good.
Yeah, no, he has the look. And here's the other thing. It's not apparent. It's maybe a little bit more apparent for my wedding comedy. It's not apparent in this film, but he is a total Jim Carrey type. And
really?
And can do that kind of stuff. He doesn't do it in Guy Friends because it wouldn't be appropriate. But he is a Jim Carrey type and has that kind of vibe and ability. And like I said, he's got the look. He even looks a little bit like Jim Carrey. He's got the look. He's great. So he was referred to me. I cast him in my wedding comedy. He was really funny. It's like this bit character. My entire direction to him for my wedding comedy was he loved this direction because he was like, that clarifies everything. I told him there is literally no reason for this character to be in the film. So have fun. And that's all. So we decided to work together. I thought of him for Ted. I cast him, and then it kind of snowballed into, hey, you want to produce this with me? Because he lent so much to this film. Jamie and Patrick's apartment was his mother's apartment. The house for the engagement party is his family's house. He lent a lot to this. Oh, and his and Ted and Sandy's apartment is his own apartment. So like he contributed a lot. He and the Clark family contributed a lot, and I thank you immensely for that help. Yes. So he referred me. I auditioned a number of people for Sandy, and he referred Katie because he went to the actor's studio with Katie, and they were very close friends there, very, close personal friends and close professional friends. And he referred Katie, and Katie's audition was just terrific. So I cast her pretty easily. Now, Katie and Justin are both trained actors, and I know, like, I directed them. We rehearsed on Zoom and everything, but I also told them, like, you, Katie, Kavita, please, like, the three of you, just go work together. And they did on their own. And I'm sure, I don't know, you'd have to interview them. I'm sure that Justin and Katie worked with Kavita and gave her things, probably gave her, an actor studio's worth I don't know how to say this. Basically, a free actor studio education.
Right.
And it clearly helped. It clearly worked. And here's another nice thing too. Kavita in real life, maybe this is why I thought this should be good for the role. Kavita in real life, I think, is more friends with guys than she is with girls. And so she and Katie actually became really good friends and are still good friends. I'm sure I'll see Katie at the wedding. But I think, the film is about Jamie befriending her first female friend. And I think Kavita largely did the same thing while making the film, befriending Katie.
Yeah.
So
what do you hope people take away from the movie about friendship, about gender, about all these different things that, we sort of talk about in the movie? What do you is your hopeful takeaway that people have?
I can build on a previous question. One of my hopeful takeaways originally was just like, these are the dumb things that guys do. Because like I said, that was my original thing. That was my own personal original entertainment in writing the film. And then the film naturally on its own, because it's where the film wanted to go. And don't credit me for any of this. It's completely incidental and based off my friend Erica and Elizabeth's suggestion. Anything else that it says about friendship and particularly female friendship is incidental. And it was just me following where I think the story wanted to go. Like I would compare, I hate to be mystical at all with story, because I'm like the least mystical person in the world. I'm actually like a sheer magician. But what was I going to say? I compare films like I have not even raised a child, so this is inappropriate for me to say. I've not weathered that battle. But I think of it as like raising a child, which is you can't force a child to be a certain personality type or to want to pursue. I mean, you can try to go into a certain field. What you can do is try to discover who this child is hardwired to be, and then help the child to be the best version of that child, right? And I think story is the same way. So this direction that I went with friendship and female friendship, and ultimately Jamie disentangling herself from like the complacency of her predominantly male friendship, basically the complacency of like being validated by a bunch of guys who secretly want to hook up with her. That's a pretty that's easy. It's easy and nice to be said yes to most of the time, and that's hard to break away from. Sandy's the first person who challenges her, and Jamie disentangles herself from that situation. That's what the entire third act is her disentangling herself and setting out on her own, pursuing the career that she wants. And then once she's finally done that, only then is she rewarded with, the fully actualized friendship with Sandy. All that stuff that I said, I hope people take away from the film. I just don't want to credit myself for achieving anything. It's just what the story wanted. I told you what I initially wanted people to take away from the film. That's in there. And,
she kind of realizes that she's been friend zoning all these people and not giving them the importance in her life that they deserved. That's kind of her. That was at least the takeaway that I kind of had from it. And also, I mean, I kind of had the reverse because most of my friends have always been girls. Okay. And it's been interesting since I started like podcasting, YouTubing, because even the film criticism space is there's a lot more guys. than girls. And so
Yeah.
I've seen a bit of a change in the last like 10 years as far as my friendships. And it is interesting, and it is a different dynamic. It's just not the same, because men and women aren't the same, and it's so yeah, I connected, even though I'm like the polar, I'm like the flip of it. The
I'm
opposite.
glad to hear that because I'm relieved to hear that.
Yeah.
Because I have heard, like this film played at festivals, and so I've spoken to some people who have seen it already, and certainly I've met, like plenty of women who come up to me and say like, "Oh my gosh, I so relate because I am, like I am more friends with, other men than I am with other women," and so they related to that. Or like one, yeah. So I already felt like, okay, well, I guess I achieved that then. To hear that, like you're actually more friends with,
Yeah.
men, but you still, related out. Oh, good. Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's nice. Glad to hear
Well,
that.
I did enjoy it. I get tons of these emails with indies, and I try to just pay attention. Oh, is a rom-com or an animation that pops
Right.
up, and I'm like, oh, I'll take a look. And usually, to be frank, they're terrible. But this one I liked. I enjoyed
Okay.
it. I liked
Perfect.
the faux documentary style of it. I liked the characters. I thought it was funny, sweet at the end. I liked that you didn't feel a need to make Katie and Jamie into a love match. I mean, not that there'd be anything wrong with that, but I know I just thought it was sort of refreshing that they're friends.
Yes, and thank you, because certainly many people, when they watch it, they think it's going to go in that direction, and it's like, no, that's not what this is about.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
about platonic friends. It's just
Yeah.
about a movie. And the faux documentary thing, to anybody watching, that's like that's a segment of the film. There are some
Yeah.
interstitial interviews that are faux documentary. The rest
And
of
those
it
are in color.
Yes, those are, yes. So one thing I didn't describe when I described to the film to the audience, is that it's a normal narrative film, but there are interstitial interviews. The film itself is in black and white, but the interstitial interviews are in color. I won't ruin, or I won't spoil how that actually culminates at the end of the film, but yeah, it's I don't know, 95% in black and white, and then these faux documentary style interviews are in color, and I like to think that it works pretty well in the end when you see why it was that way.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
To close off our interview with some rapid fire, get to know you questions that we like to end with. Okay.
Yes.
First question: what is the best ice cream flavor?
Best ice cream flavor? Oh, wow. I like in life just about anything lemon. So I like a lemon ice cream flavor. And I also am a sucker for chocolate. So I know like the last ice cream film I had was like a really great lemon ice cream with chocolate, a scoop of chocolate also, and then mixing it was really good.
Sounds good. All right. What's your favorite color?
Yellow. Wow. Lemon, yellow.
Okay.
Wow, how about that?
What music?
I will say, I'm sorry. I don't use yellow that much in film. I don't think that it comes across that, like, for some reason, like there are parts of my films where I'm just like, oh, it's such an ugly yellow. But it's my favorite color.
Yeah. Well, what music are you into right now?
Man, okay. The Spotify, I might not seem like an obvious candidate for this, but Spotify every year will tell me how much I like Eminem, which is true. But my favorite band of all time is Muse. I love Muse. I'm a piano player, and They are fantastic instrumentalists, and I forget his name. Is it Matt Bellamy? I can't remember, but their pianist is fantastic. So, and Muse, this is actually a good film question. Muse makes music like if I made music, it's like they pulled it out of my head. And it's also very, very cinematic, a lot of their songs. So,
Yeah. What is your go-to date night food?
go to date night food. Oh man, anything that doesn't make me bloated. Since you said it's a date. But and so if I were going to enjoy it, I mean, oh gosh, I love pizza. Or here we go. Anything with shrimp.
Okay.
There we go. Anything with shrimp.
What is your go-to date night activity if you're going out and doing something?
Oh, I would love to go to a movie, but you don't, during the movie, you're not talking to somebody. So frankly, for a date, I'm more inclined just to like go to dinner, certainly drink a little bit because I'm far more charming with at least a little bit of it. And not that that's original, and then just actually talk and, meet the person.
Well, we always say with the movie date, the key is you go to the movie first.
Yes.
And then dinner.
Yes.
Because then you have something to talk about.
Yes.
At dinner.
Yes.
You talk about the movie.
I agree entirely. What's funny is like I'm also, it could be either, I feel like it would be a turn on for like 10% of the women and maybe I date, and then a turn off. Though, like I feel like for most like lay people, I'm not the best person to talk to. Like I saw what is it? The new Mean Girls. And I saw some people who were like, oh, it was great. And I'm like, oh my God, the direction, I had such problems with. And I'd go into like, detail about it, and they'd be like,
yeah, it was directed like a TikTok video.
Yes, it was. Oh my God.
It really was. And
nuts.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. Which do you like better, dogs or cats?
I know people are going to hate me, but I like cats.
Okay, good.
Sorry, everybody. I know the word.
No, cats need the love. I always say that cats, you have to earn their love. Dogs just give it freely.
That's precisely my thought. Like, maybe it's self-loathing. I'm like, I don't like this. This thing likes me automatically. Fuck that. Like, I don't deserve that.
Right. Well,
man.
Which do you like better, beaches or mountains?
I like beaches. All right. With a qualification, I grew up in Florida, so I have to like beaches better. Right? I do enjoy mountains. They're beautiful. This is my one qualification. I love beaches, and I love like swimming is one of my favorite things to do in life. But once I step out of salt water, I need to be able to go shower off because I hate the stickiness of salt water. So absolutely beaches, as long as there's like a shower for me to go shower off really fast and get the salt water off.
What is your favorite holiday to celebrate?
To celebrate. Least favorite would be my birthday. I'm not much of a holiday person. I love the time off. I will say this, and I am like the least religious person in the world, but I have to say Christmas is the best designed holiday. I mean, like,
yeah. I mean, it's hard to beat Christmas because it's like a whole season. As opposed to just a day or a week, like most holidays.
It's a whole season. The branding is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the branding is just fantastic.
Yeah.
But here's what I'll say. Because I'm a nerd, I'll go with Pi Day as my favorite. 3.1 Mark Pi Day. One of my best friends knows pi to I don't know how many numbers. and so like we're nerds.
Good.
Yeah. So.
All right. Last question. What is your favorite Hallmark or romantic movie?
Ooh, Hallmark oh gosh. All right. It's going to be tough between When Harry Met Sally and Annie Hall.
Well, those are practically the same movie.
They are the same movie.
I mean, they're very similar.
They very much are.
So for one's about a breakup and one's not.
Since you said a romantic movie, I'm going to go with When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah, that's a good one. A good one. Well, very good. You did it. You answered all the questions.
That was fun. That was great. I feel like I was on Stephen Colbert with his Colbert.
Oh, good. Well, if people want to see the movie, how are they going to be able to do that?
Yes. Thank you. Essential question. So I'm still waiting for a few updates from my distributor, but the film will open theatrically I'm going to list them all out. In New York at the Anthology Film Archives, in Los Angeles at Cinelounge Sunset, in San Francisco at Cinelounge Tiburon, I don't know how to say it. In Seattle at the Seattle International Film Festival Center, SIFF. In Phoenix at the Gateway Pavilions 18, and in Sarasota, where I grew up, at the Burns Court Cinema, although only for the weekend, on May 31. And same day, the film should be available for TVOD,
Okay, great.
rental for streaming. I don't know all the platforms yet. I haven't heard from my distributor.
Okay. Well, yeah. Will you have that all on like a website or something like that?
You know what? Follow at Vile Henchman. I don't use social media myself, but I do have social media for my company, which is really just me. I mean, it is an LLC. It's a real company.
Right.
Vile Henchman, which I'll spell VILEHENCHMEN, at Vile Henchman on Instagram and Twitter. It's Twitter, it's not X.
Yeah, I will never say X.
No. And the WWF will always be the WWF, not WWE. Give me a break. So yeah, follow me there. You'll see. I don't know if I've set up the website. I mean, vilehenchman.com, same spelling.
Okay.
Let's go there. I need to update it.
Okay, I'll put all that in the description, and if you get any more information, just let me know. I can put that in in between. And thanks so much. It was great to meet you.
Likewise, thank you so much for interviewing me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Jonathan for coming on the podcast. This was so much fun to get to talk with him and find out sort of the behind the scenes of an indie film. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about all the things we talked about in the comments. And I'll put all the information about the movie Guy Friends in the description. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. We really, really appreciate that so much. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group and merch store. You can get I Love Rom-Coms shirts at the merch store now. So take a look at that. And thanks so much. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.